This is a pretty big lesson because first of all, we're going to look at exactly how grammatical range and accuracy is scored, then how to ensure the highest possible score in your Writing Task 2 essay. After that, I will teach you my 5-step strategy to ensure that you can improve your grammar ability and have the required score you need in the IELTS writing test. In my previous lessons, I looked at the other 3 band descriptors for Writing Task 2, so this will be the last lesson in this series. My next lessons will focus on guiding you through the process of writing a Task 2 essay from start to finish. Make sure to click subscribe and the bell icon so that you don't miss those lessons. My name is Lara Ryan, I've been an IELTS examiner, an IELTS teacher at the British Council, and I'm the founder of Complete Test Success. If you're ready to start improving your grammatical range and accuracy scores, let's get started. As the name implies, the examiner will be checking for the range of grammar and the accuracy of grammar throughout your Task 2 essay. However, the first thing that the examiner will take into account is the clarity of your writing. Bands 1 to 5 are difficult to understand. Obviously, a band 5 will not be as difficult as a band 4, but nevertheless, there will be some parts that are confusing. A band 6 can be understood throughout the essay, but not always easily. Bands 7, 8 and 9 can all be understood easily from start to finish. The difference between bands 7, 8 and 9 is the range of structures used and the frequency of mistakes made. Next, the examiner will look at the frequency of grammar errors in your writing. Errors in any part of grammar will be counted as a mistake here. This includes punctuation, so make sure you can use full stops, commas and capital letters before your IELTS test. So let's take a look at the number of mistakes that is considered acceptable for each of the band scores. We'll start with a band 5 because nobody really needs a band 4 or lower in their IELTS writing test. So, band 5 is described as having frequent errors. Band 6 as having some errors. Band 7 a few errors. Band 8, occasional errors, and Band 9, rare minor errors. From time to time, I hear IELTS students say that these terms are very vague and that means that the grammatical range and accuracy score is actually very subjective. I can promise you, however, that is not the case. The terms frequent, some, a few, occasional, and rare have completely different meanings. Granted, they are not specific numbers of mistakes, but they are specific descriptions of how many errors are acceptable. Now, the descriptions that we looked at for bands 5 and 6 are accurate, but there's a little bit more involved in bands 7, 8 and 9 in relation to the frequency of mistakes. You are also expected to have error-free sentences. An error-free sentence is a sentence that has absolutely no grammar mistakes from start to finish. If there are vocabulary mistakes, that's fine, and it will still be considered an error-free sentence as long as there are no grammar mistakes. So for a band 7, you can have a few errors, but you also need to have frequent error-free sentences. And for a band 8, you can have occasional errors, but you also need to have a majority of error-free sentences. Band 9 is a little bit different. You're also expected to have a majority of error-free sentences. So it's okay to have rare errors, but it's not okay to make the same type of grammar mistake repeatedly. For a band 9 in grammatical range and accuracy, you can only make slips. Slips are mistakes that are naturally made while writing. Everyone makes slips while writing, but these mistakes have nothing to do with your knowledge of grammar. I make these mistakes when writing in English, and you make these mistakes when writing in your first language. So in your IELTS test, if you make 2 or 3 mistakes with the same grammar area, the examiner will know that this is a problem with your grammar ability and not a slip. Here's an example. If an IELTS candidate wrote, "I have 2 dogs and they like to eat carrot," the examiner will know that these are not slips as the candidate has made 2 mistakes with plurals. Of course, the sentence should be, "I have 2 dogs and they like to eat carrots." So when it comes to band 9, you need to have rare minor errors, but these can only be slips. Now remember, the frequency of mistakes you make will be balanced against the range of structures in your writing to decide on your score. It's not enough to just have 0 mistakes, you also need to have an appropriate range of structures. Before we look at the specifics of how the range of structures is assessed by the IELTS examiner, I want to dispel a myth that I've heard over and over again. I've met a lot of IELTS students who believe they need to use every single grammatical structure in the English language to get a high score. That is absolutely not true. The IELTS examiner does not have a checklist of structures or a specific number of structures that they are looking for. Now, this is an IELTS lesson, not a grammar lesson, but we will look at some examples of various structure types so that you do understand what is expected in the IELTS writing test. Firstly, we'll look at simple sentences. Too many simple sentences in your essay will reduce your grammatical range and accuracy score. Here are some examples in case you don't know what simple sentences are. Dogs are my favourite animal. I really like cats too. I had a dog when I was younger. His name was Scout. Now these are all simple sentences and they're just that very basic structure of subject, verb, object. If you use nothing but simple sentences in your essay, you will score a band 4 for grammatical range and accuracy. For a band 5 or a band 6, a small number of simple sentences in your essay would be acceptable, but for band 7 upwards, you should aim to have no simple sentences in your answer. The easiest way to avoid using simple sentences in your answer is to use compound sentences instead. This is simply taking two simple sentences and joining them together with words like and, or but. Again, let's look at some examples. So before we had the sentences, dogs are my favourite animal. I really like cats too. So those simple sentences can be turned into a compound sentence by just saying, dogs are my favourite animal, but I really like cats too. And we had the sentences, I had a dog when I was younger. His name was Scout. And I can change this into a compound sentence with the word and. I had a dog when I was younger and his name was Scout. Compound sentences are still pretty basic structures, but they can prevent you from getting a very low score. To get a higher score, you will need to include complex structures in your answer. Don't confuse the words complex and complicated. In this context, they do not have the same meaning. A complex structure simply means that there is a dependent clause in the sentence. So you take a simple sentence and you just add extra information with words like while, because, if, and when. Again, let's look at some examples. So here we had two simple sentences. Dogs are my favourite animal. I really like cats too. And I can change the second sentence into I really like cats too when they're not trying to scratch me. So this first part is a simple sentence, and this second part is a complex structure. We also had the sentences, I had a dog when I was younger, his name was Scout, and I can change his name was Scout into a complex structure by adding, because my brother liked that name. Again, the first part is a simple sentence, and the second part is a complex structure. So you can see that complex structures are not actually complicated, but it is essential that you use these even if you're just aiming for a band 5. For bands 7, 8 and 9, you'll need to use various types of compound complex structures. This could be two complex structures joined together with words like and, or but, or it could be a simple sentence and a complex sentence joined together with words like and, or but. Here we have the simple sentence and the complex structure from before, and we can join these together. Dogs are my favourite animal, but I really like cats too when they're not trying to scratch me. So that is a compound complex structure. And the other example we had earlier, we can join them together with the words and. I had a dog when I was younger and his name was Scout because my brother really liked that name. Again, you're looking at a compound complex structure right there. So what we looked at right there was a simple sentence and a complex sentence joined together to become a compound complex sentence. But you can join two complex sentences in the exact same way. So here I have, dogs are my favourite animal because they're so friendly. I really like cats too when they're not trying to scratch me. So those are two complex structures and I can join them together. Dogs are my favourite animal because they're so friendly, but I really like cats too when they're not trying to scratch me. So in yellow you can see we have 2 independent clauses, and in green you can see that we have 2 dependent clauses. So that's 4 clauses in total. Usually, when IELTS candidates try to write sentences with more than 4 clauses, they tend to lose clarity, and that will bring them back to a band score of 4 or 5, instead of further increasing their grammatical range and accuracy score. This is why, in general, I advise my students not to write any sentences that are longer than 4 clauses. Now we're going to look at how you can get the highest possible score with your current level of grammar. Firstly, it's not essential that every sentence you have in your answer is a compound complex sentence. For a high score, you just need to avoid simple sentences and then use a variety of complex and compound complex structures. Now, if you've already completed my lexical resource lessons, you'll remember that my advice there was to take no risks. However, for grammatical range and accuracy, the advice is different. You actually need to take some risks to get a high score. And this is because you need to balance the accuracy and the range of the grammar that you're using. If you keep it too simple, you'll have a limited range of structures, and that will reduce your score. Now, imagine one student has written 3 Task 2 essays. Their grammar ability was the same each time, but their grammatical range and accuracy scores were different. This is because they approached grammar differently in each essay. In essay 1, they pushed themselves to use as many structures as possible and to write long, complicated sentences. This resulted in more errors than they would normally make, which in turn reduced the clarity. Because of this, the student got a lower band score than they are capable of. In essay 2, the candidate pushed themselves a little bit, but not too far, and used a range of structures that they are relatively comfortable with. This meant that there were fewer errors, the essay was clearer, and the band score was higher. In essay number 3, this is where things started to go wrong again. Because this student reduced the range of grammar between essays 1 and 2, and that resulted in a higher score, they're now under the impression that they can reduce the range further, and this will increase their score even more. However, this was not the outcome. In essay 3, they only included structures that they could use very well, and the writing was very clear. But this time, the limited range of structures has resulted in a lower score again. So as you can see, it is important to push yourself to use a range of structures, but if you push yourself beyond your limit, you're going to actually reduce your score. So far in this lesson, we've looked at how grammatical range and accuracy is scored and how you can get the highest possible score in your IELTS writing test. This is absolutely perfect if your grammar level is at the ability you need for your required score. However, you might need to improve your grammar ability before your IELTS test, so I will show you my 5-step strategy to do that right now. The problem a lot of students have is that they spend a lot of time studying grammar, but they don't actually improve that much. This is often because their approach isn't suitable. The most common mistake that I see students making is relying completely on practice exercises. Grammar practice exercises are great if you need to find out whether you're making mistakes or not. But practice exercises alone will not improve your grammar. The 5 steps I'm about to show you will ensure you improve your grammar as effectively as possible. Step 1 is to discover your key mistake. Your key mistake is the grammar mistake you make most often, and as a result is the one that reduces your score more than anything else. By just focusing on this one mistake, you will improve your score much faster. So, how can you discover your key mistake? Unfortunately, you cannot be the person to determine your own key mistake. Your analysis will be based on your own grammar ability, and that means that it won't be accurate. You can just ask any native English speaker or English teacher. The native English speaker will be able to point out your mistakes, but the English teacher will be able to tell you what types of mistakes you're making, so that would actually be more convenient for you. I also have live feedback lessons with my newsletter subscribers, so you can join those if you don't have anybody else to help you. I will leave a link in the description below. The other option is to use an online correction service. There are a lot of automated ones, but those are not reliable. You will need to spend money on a writing correction that's done by a real person. Step number 2 is study the grammar rules. Now, I know you've seen all the grammar rules a million times already, so you probably think that this is a waste of your time. But in this step, you're not trying to find new grammar rules. You and I both know that you're not going to find any grammar rules that you haven't seen before. What you're looking for in this step is grammar rules that you don't fully understand. When you find a rule that is confusing or complicated, that's the rule you need to focus on. Mastering this particular rule is exactly what you need to do to bring up your grammatical range and accuracy score. When studying grammar rules, you can use any grammar resource that is clear and comprehensive. But as usual, I have some recommendations for you, and you will find links for these in the video description below. The first one is Cambridge Online Dictionary. Just click on the Grammar tab here and you'll see that they do a great job of explaining and exemplifying the various parts of English grammar here. The second one is Learning English by the BBC. Go to the website, click the grammar button, and you'll see all the links for the various levels here. It's also really helpful to search online about anything that's confusing you. For example, here I've searched for what's the difference between present perfect simple and present perfect continuous, and I'll find plenty of reliable answers to this question here. Step 3 is active reading. Most students will just go straight from learning the rules to trying to use them. However, active reading is a more logical next step because it allows you to become more familiar with the various grammar rules that you have just studied. What is active reading? It's when you analyse the grammar you're studying in texts that you read. By doing this, you confirm if you have actually understood the rules or not. Let's say I'm currently working on present perfect. As I'm reading texts, every single time I see present perfect, I stop reading and I ask myself 3 questions. First, which present perfect rule applies to this? Second, why was present perfect used here rather than a different tense? Thirdly, would I have used the correct tense in this context? If there's anything I'm unsure of, I'll have to go back to my grammar notes or do some more research online to make sure I fully understand this. Now, obviously, you'll need to adjust these 3 questions depending on the grammar point you're working on, but you get the idea. So, I was reading E-News, the newspaper I showed you in my vocabulary strategy, and I found present perfect being used in this sentence. Lastly, Infantino has pledged that FIFA will be doubling its planned $500 million investment in women's soccer over the next 4 years, saying that we have more than $2.7 billion reserves. So here we can see present perfect was used, and now I need to go through the 3 questions. Number 1. Which present perfect rule applies to this? This is for something that happened in the past but is important in the present. Number 2. Why was present perfect used here rather than a different tense? In this case, present perfect is the most suitable because the time when it happened isn't important. Therefore, present perfect is more suitable than past simple in this situation. Number 3. Would I have used the correct tense in this context? Honestly, I'm not sure. I may have used past simple, but I can see why present perfect is a better fit in this context. Continue active reading until you've become more comfortable and confident that you understand how this grammar point is used. Step 4 is controlled practice. This is where you actually start to use the grammar that you've learned. Controlled practice is an environment where you can easily find the mistakes that you're making. This is where grammar practice exercises are absolutely perfect because any mistakes you make will be found out immediately. Again, any grammar resource that you like is fine, but I would recommend that you use a resource that is organised according to the grammar points so that you can easily find the one that you are studying. The 2 sites that I recommend for this are Perfect English Grammar and British Council. Again, I will leave links for these sites in the video description below. And you continue with this step until you're getting most of the answers correct in the practice exercises you're doing for your key mistake. Step number 5 is to start writing Task 2 essays again. At this point, you'll have made a lot of progress. Now, you will still make some mistakes. That's completely normal. As long as you're making fewer mistakes than before, that's perfect. When you're finished writing your essay, make sure to proofread for any mistakes that you can fix by yourself. And I have one bonus step for you. which is you should check your grammatical range and accuracy score. In general, you don't really need the help of an IELTS expert to improve your grammar. However, at some point, you do need to check if you're ready for the test or not. If you need to get a band 8 for grammatical range and accuracy and you're currently a band 7, that means you're not ready for the test and you're just wasting time and wasting money by sitting a test that you're not ready for. Only an IELTS expert can accurately tell you what grammatical range and accuracy score you will get, so it's really best that you check with one before you book your test. If your grammatical range and accuracy score is lower than the one you need, go back to step 1 of this strategy, find your new key mistake, and repeat the process. So that's everything you need to know about grammatical range and accuracy in IELTS writing. I hope you found this lesson to be helpful, and if you did, click the like button so other students can find it too. You can also leave a comment below to let me know how you intend to find your key mistake.